one of my proudest moments in Kith was walking through the dining room and seeing white people eating fufu and stew with their hands, and then a Nigerian table next to them teaching them how to do it. It was like,
talk across the tables.
This is why I do this. I want to see all walks of life eating this food that they probably would never be eating.
Right. Hello, beautiful people. You're listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, and oh my goodness, my guest today is somebody who I professionally and personally just adore, and he is having, I dare to say, the week of his life. Kwame Onwuachi from Kith in DC, and there was and other projects too. Philly Wing Fry, author of the new memoir, Notes from a Young Black Chef. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kat. I equally feel the same about you professionally and personally.
Oh my gosh.
We text like every single day.
We do.
Since we met in Copenhagen.
We do. So actually, I'm sorry to the audience about what's about to happen, and to spring this on Kwame, that actually what we're going to do is turn out the lights and let Kwame have a nap.
Oh, nice.
Just for the next hour. You're just going to
Nice.
hear sleep sounds from Kwame. Because the thing that we text about, a whole lot of different things, but the through line is that we remind each other to breathe. And which is, we had discussed this, I believe, we were at Mad Symposium in Copenhagen and connected because, I'm pretty open about talking about mental health, but that's a way of dealing with stuff myself too. And we had a pretty open discussion with people from around the world about that. But then we started texting each other. And so this week, not much has happened this week. Can you detail what has happened since, starting with the weekend for you?
Starting with the weekend, I was in Los Angeles filming with San Pellegrino for the James Beard Rising Star category for the awards.
Yeah, so that nomination came through. You're a finalist.
Yes. It's always been a dream of mine, so it's very surreal to be out there with all the other, amazing chefs that are in that category. And then I got on a plane to come to New York to shoot for the cover of Food and Wine magazine.
Because he is a Best New Chef. And the great thing, so a little bit behind the scenes here, the calls came down the same day for the Beard announcements, and our restaurant editor at large, Jordana Rothman, calling you to say that you are a Best New Chef.
Yes, the same day. I'm literally on the phone with her, then I get a text. And I'm like crying, like I'm talking sniffling, boo-hoo, crying. It's crazy. And
well, so you were in town for shooting the cover of that, and also for the reveal of that, and the party where that was celebrated also doubled as a release party for
my book,
this beautiful baby. Yeah.
It's it definitely was overwhelming leading up to it. I texted you all the time, but it definitely feels like a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulder now that the book is out.
Yeah.
Now that the Best New Chef announcement is out. The Beard shoot is over with. I can continue working in the restaurant.
Grinding as you
Exactly.
do. So let's talk through the process of writing the book. You and I have both written very, very personal books. And I think what a lot of people don't necessarily know, or they might intuit this, that writing those books isn't hard just because it's hard to sit down and write, but because it comes in order to write a really authentic book, you have to revisit the worst things that ever happened to you and be really honest with that and kind of live in the present with the past. And I got physically ill with that digging up. Can you talk about the process of bearing your life and your soul to the world in writing this book?
So, when we go through these things when we're younger, we kind of like crumple them up into a really tight ball and then store them somewhere deep and dark.
In an organ.
In an organ where no one can find.
Yeah.
But when you're writing a book about your life story, these things start to unravel naturally.
Yeah.
And it's a tough process, and you get through it day by day, but it's really cathartic in the way that you're telling your story in a therapeutic way.
Yeah.
you know?
And it's hard to sort of learn how to do this, to take the thing and bubble it up to the present and then dissipate it out. I know that when I wrote my book, I had to have a deal with my husband where saying, I am going to be kind of not my best self for a while. I'm going to have to just go into a hole and write this thing, but said, if you see me doing that or if you need me home, you can say come home and talk it through. So you have a fantastic fiance.
Yes.
And so what was your life like as you're launching a restaurant and going through all of this and coming off of Top Chef and all of this? How do you reconcile that relationship in the moment?
So it was a lot of when I was ready to talk about these things.
Yeah.
That was the approach that we took because I've never talked about them to anyone, period, not even her.
Yeah.
Things that I went through as a child, things that have made me who I am, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So when I would tell her that like I'm writing a chapter about this point in my life, she's like, "Well, you've never opened up to me about this.
Yeah.
Like I would like for you to tell me. So I don't have to read it in a book."
Yeah.
So and then I would tell her when I was ready, and that's that's how it went. And having that support system made it kind of okay to like release, and it was therapeutic. It was like going to therapy. I was talking about my life and documenting it every single day for 2.5 years.
Yeah, and it's such an intensely generous book because you really do lay it out on the table in a whole lot of ways about talking about growing up. And then I think a part that's been talked about a lot in the media is your experience in fine dining kitchens. So let's talk about your career path, this sort of fire in your belly to want to be in the kitchen, and especially in a fine dining kitchen where people with your face are not often seen. Let's talk about that. Like, how did you recognize that this was the thing you wanted to do, and then deal with the fact that in your book you talked about something where a chef said to you, like, you're not welcome here, you're not wanted here. How do you know that that's your place and make it your place that it should have been all along?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. That's a great question.
Let's talk about it.
I think it has a lot of answers. So
Step
we'll start
into
with
the discomfort. Let's do it.
So we'll talk about the fire in my belly and how I got, to where I am and why I'm sitting across this table from you right now, because I think it's important for the listeners to understand
Absolutely.
that. My mother's a chef.
Yeah.
She was an accountant, and she had babysitters raising us. She wanted to spend time with us while still, keeping the lights on, per se.
Of course.
So she started a catering company from the house, and me and my sister became her first 2 employees.
I love it. How old were you?
I was 4 or 5.
Oh my gosh, little tiny Kwame.
Yeah, so I'd have a little step stool. I'd be peeling shrimp was the first thing I learned how to do.
Muscle memory
Exactly.
must be so deep within you.
Exactly, and then making the trinity, onions, bell peppers, and celery, and then stirring roux. My mother's Creole, Trinidadian, so we have a lot of French influences in our cuisine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That roux is religious.
Yeah, so that's how I started. Fast forward a couple years. As you'll read in the book, I actually broke her cutting board that was passed down to her.
Yeah.
And I tried to get rid of it, and she found it, and it didn't go over so well for me. So she sent me to Nigeria to teach me respect. My father's Nigerian. I ended up staying there for a lot longer than she had promised I would. And I came back with a newfound sense of appreciation for life. Went to college, dropped out, hated it. Only thing I knew how to do was work in kitchens, So I started working in the dining room. I started working at, from rib shacks to...
You were at Kraft?
I was at Kraft, yeah. I worked all the way from Louisiana to New York City.
Wow.
And then I started a catering company when I was about 20 years old, in the footsteps of my mom, and sold candy on the train in New York.
And nutcrackers?
And nutcrackers in order to save up money. So that's how it introduced me into really cooking. And
This
then I
is in
worked
your
at
blood.
some... Yeah, it's in my blood. My grandmother had a restaurant. My great-grandmother had a restaurant. So when you talk about fine dining, I was really... attracted to it just for the attention to detail.
Yeah.
It's something that I've always been in tune with my whole life,
Yeah.
Whether it's inside the kitchen or outside the kitchen. And when you're in fine dining, getting to the end of your question, you give your all to it.
Yeah.
So you talk about, per se, I wasn't getting paid to be there. You know,
Yeah.
I was there for 6 months. You know,
You weren't allowed to sit.
I wasn't allowed to sit at the meetings, which was it was normal for the apprentices. You know, I don't think that's how you should treat someone, but
No.
but anyway, when you talk about someone saying not wanting you there, which
Yeah.
is, you know, to your point,
Which was vocalized.
which was vocalized, I remember thinking in that moment, like, damn, you know, like I'm putting in the hours, you
Yeah.
know, 16 hours a day. I'm not getting paid, and that's okay, you know. My head is down, but like the one thing you want to judge me on is something that I can't control, which is the color of my skin.
Yeah.
How does this? Like, I'm just here to work, you
Yeah.
know? And these are the things I was screaming on the inside. Like, I'm
Yeah.
here to work. I'm working just as hard as this guy. But you just have to say, yes, chef, and put your head down.
Yeah.
And that's the industry, you know,
Yeah.
that's how it is, fortunately.
But there's trauma to an internalized scream, because eventually, like, your bones can't take it anymore. It becomes and for some people, it can become just part of their body and who they are, and they might internalize it in this particular way. If you're told that long enough, you might believe it. And you've heard things from various people, like trying to categorize you. Oh, you should be doing collard greens and all this kind of stuff. But you knew your rightful place in a kitchen. And so you went from per se to talk about your path away from there, and sort of following that thing in yourself.
From there, I went to 11 Madison Park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was there. And then after there, I went on the road and did pop-ups around the country for
Yeah.
about 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting thing, because like the two kitchens that you mentioned are probably two of the most meticulous places on the planet. When I think of you as a deeply meticulous person. Okay, he was the fashion star of Best New Chefs. Everyone was paying attention to your jackets, your shoes, your all of that kind of stuff. So meticulous in dress, in your food, in your language, in absolutely everything. Do you give yourself permission to be a person at times? When do you get to let your guard down?
I think in this book, I let my guard down.
Yeah.
I think that's the time where you can capture it. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think when I have a lot of discussions with people like you, I let my guard down. You know, I don't do it with everyone. It's
I feel really lucky to have you in my life.
I feel the same way. I feel like, I mean, you've changed the way I looked at things in that one conversation that we had in Copenhagen.
Oh my gosh.
And
I kind of wish everybody could have been in.
in that tent.
Yeah. It was physically a tent. We
It
were
was a
sitting
small
on
tent, yeah.
hay bales.
Yeah,
talking.
with hay on the floor, and because it was muddy, and we were talking about mental health. And I had a very internal moment when you were talking, and I realized at the moment when I was doing my pre-shifts, I was talking to myself in the restaurant.
Yeah, you're the head chef. So you're
Because I don't have anyone to call, and then anyone to
Yeah.
talk to, because we have to have this like stoic facade.
Yeah.
We are always on 100, you know. We have to have our stations the cleanest in the kitchen.
Right.
We have to always be clean. We have to always have nothing going on, you know, in
Right.
every sense of the word, from the top to the bottom.
Right.
And for me, pre-shift was the way for me to get it out there, talking to myself.
Right.
And I realized that in that conversation that we had.
Yeah, it's the thing that you have to share, because all eyes are on you. And I want to talk about all eyes being on you, because it is from your team, it is now from the world at large, and it's also a thing where, you know, I first, you know, I met you in person, you know, sort of later on, but I got to know you on Top Chef. One of my dearest friends, Isaac Toops, was on your season, and I was in it for him, and I was like, bonus, who is this other wonderful person on there? So you became on my radar. But your life changes when all of a sudden you're in front of the camera, and when you're opening up high-profile restaurants, and when there aren't, again, a whole lot of people with your skin color who get the capital to open a restaurant, and so much gets put on your shoulders from that, and that's got to lead to some fear with that. Can you talk through that? Those pressures of representation have got to be massive.
It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of sleepless nights, not because of anything other than your mind thinking. You're just thinking at all times. Like, what if no one comes to the restaurant? What if service goes horribly? I'm off tomorrow. What if somebody really important comes in tomorrow? What if somebody calls out tomorrow? It's my only day out of, the month that I have off. If someone calls out or gets sick, I still have to go in. Like, there's so much writing on it, and it comes with the territory. I have 3 restaurants, so I'm always filling in for someone that's calling out or delivering something or receiving something. But the added pressure, like you said, of, it happened to me. I mean, I was on Top Chef when I was 24.
You're a tiny baby.
Yeah, 24 years old. So I was still growing as a chef. I still am growing as a chef.
Yeah.
I don't.
You
think
remain young.
I don't think I've reached my where I want to be or even close to it.
Yeah.
And while still growing up as a professional in this industry with the spotlight on you, is it's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does your support system look like?
My support system are my friends.
Yeah.
My fiance.
Yeah.
My family, my mom.
She
I
must
call
be
them.
so proud of you.
I call them regularly. They check in on me regularly, see how I'm doing. I can talk to them about anything.
Are you a phone person or a text person?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, both. But it's having those people that kind of like believe in you more than you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
So they're with you through the good times and the bad times. Like I closed a restaurant after being open for 3 months after working on it for 2 years, and having those people that were there with you before all of that can reach down and pick you back up.
Yeah.
When you yourself feel broken that's what has kept me going.
So you talk in the book really generously about your emotional journey after Shaw Bijou closed. Like I've been in that pit before, and my body is built that way. My brain fires bad chemicals, and I super internalize it when when something happens, and I catastrophize it and make it a reflection of my whole self. And I really think like I failed. Everybody around me have failed, the world at large, and that kind of thing. Even when it hasn't really been a failure, something might have finished up, something might have done whatever. Because to me, you didn't fail at Shaw Bijou whatsoever, but I can imagine the internal narrative because you're a very harsh critic of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. When something happens and it doesn't work out, I think failing is not trying something.
Yeah,
to be quite honest. So not trying is failing, but we as chefs, as business owners, we're also giving opportunities for people, but people depend on us for their livelihood.
Yeah.
So when a restaurant closes and you see 20, 30 people without a job, it's all that is on you, especially when your name is on the marquee.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about then the decision to go into business, because it's one thing to work in other people's restaurants, and then when your own name is on the line. Well, first of all, getting anybody to invest in you is
incredibly
difficult, no matter who you are. But then, especially if you're young, and imagine especially if you're Black, and especially just all the different factors of it as well. So can you talk about raising capital to open the places?
So for me, I wanted to go from working for someone to working for myself. Because I like to be as creative as possible.
You've got
and I like that control.
Entrepreneurship deep within you too.
Yeah, I've been doing it, ever since I could, and you'll read about my entrepreneurship in the book in all different ways.
You've always had hustle.
But raising capital for me, it became with partnerships.
Yeah.
It's very similar to what, Missy and Sean was talking about the other day when we were at the Mentorship.
Yeah.
It's about the partnerships. It's not about like just creating a business plan and like shopping it around and getting a group of investors. It's like that one-on-one. And if it makes sense, then you go for it.
Yeah, just to give people a little background on what we did the other day. So as part of Best New Chefs, the thing we've been doing for the past couple of years is getting together the new chefs who sort of come there like deer in the headlights. So you're the second class I've seen go through this. And it was a different format last year, but this year we went to George Mendez's restaurant Aldea, have the whole top floor, and we had some really heavy hitters. We had Tom Colicchio, Rocco DeSpirito, Jonathan and Amelia Sawyer, Missy Robbins and Sean Feeney, and Jordan Ludwig, just like really great people people sharing stories about business and mental health and all this kind of stuff. And Missy Robbins and Sean Feeney of Missy and Lilia have a pretty incredible partnership that has taken a lot of time to develop, for the trust to build up, and then the constant work in it too. Finding a trust with somebody is really, really huge.
It's huge. It's very, very important. And that conversation really, hit home for me. And
yeah, because you talk pretty intensely in the book about like partnerships that maybe, were challenged at some point where you fall into bad behaviors sometimes.
Yeah, people reveal themselves over time, and it's important to vet your partners and to get to know them for a substantial amount of time, before you decide to do this incredibly intense, hard thing that's going to take over the majority of your life.
I think next to marriage, that is probably the most intense partnership of your time. And actually probably in some cases it's harder than marriage, because it does, it operates on all these different wavelengths, and you don't necessarily get to like kiss and make up at the...
Yeah, or just walk away.
Right. Yeah, it takes work to do that and have that trust build up. And I know that with Sean and Missy, they were neighbors for 7 years before any of this came into place. So they really had that deep and fundamental open thing. But now, the eyes are turned. You're working in somebody else's kitchen, and you're the man now. And you wrote an incredible essay for Food and Wine. And by the way, we had this podcast scheduled, and we had that essay scheduled before I knew you were going to be Best New Chef. So,
yeah, that is true.
So that was pretty exciting. And in the essay, there was this funny part. I was looking through it, and you were saying all these different accolades, like James Beard nomination, I want it. Like Best New Chef, I want it.
I had no idea any of this was happening.
No, he wrote all of this before it happened. So it was like, I always make jokes about like Oprah and The Secret, but I kind of believe it.
I believe it. You write it down, make it happen. That's another book that's great.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know that one, but maybe I need to know it now. But you also wrote in that about the experience of like the delivery guy coming in and not identifying you as head chef, and just like the eye roll of like, you've gotten to the place that you do, and you still have these like micro and macro things that happen
that are affecting your day that you have no control over.
Yeah.
And I try to let it not get to me as much as I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
I just sign and like keep firing off tickets, because like the guests are my main concern, but it's unfortunate, and I know all minorities in this industry go through it. Women go through it.
Yeah.
Women of color go through it a lot.
Very, very much. Yeah.
Always having to define your role for people and being
it's written
everything.
On your damn jacket.
Yeah,
they should just read the freaking jacket.
It's crazy.
So let's talk about then how you have built your dining room and what it looks like to include all different kinds of people, because you also wrote in the essay about the experience of like going into a restaurant and having a second of like, why is he here? How does he know about it? Kind of thing. In the same way that Portia Wilson had written an incredible piece about like sort of dining while Black, but the thing is, there are dining rooms that really just should and could and must be in the future more inclusive. So how does that look? What can people learn from what you have done to extend the hospitality in dimensions that they haven't before?
I was talking about this last night. I was in Philly doing a book signing, and a chef had reached out to me and said, like, what you said really resonated with me. I came up through fine dining in New York City. Some of the same restaurants you worked at, I'd love to just meet and talk with you about this.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, like, he was like, it's unfortunate that it's not going to change. And I was like, the only way it changes is if we start talking about it.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about it, I'm not looking to, like, talk about one person and say like, this person did this to me, like totally unfair. Like, I'm recanting a story. That's all that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about these instances, it makes people think.
Yeah.
It makes people think about when they make certain jokes.
Yeah.
It makes people think about when they're judging somebody when they're first walking into a restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's my goal for this, is just start the discussion.
Yeah.
It's not to blacklist anybody. I'm not interested in that. People have worked really, really extremely hard in their careers. But it is to open the dialogue so people start thinking about what they're saying to people and how they're making people feel.
Yeah. And I really hope we get to a point in this where like this work gets taken off your shoulders. You work so hard already, and then to put the extra work of having to talk about all of this and solve this and stuff. Like, you're using your platform in a really important and generous and meaningful way, but I want you to be able to relax too, and like I
Oh,
think about you a lot, and I just I want you to be well, and I want you to sleep. Actually, so the thematic necklace this time I wore like sort of moon
aw.
and stars because this it makes me think like it's sleepy
Yeah,
time.
sleepy time. I think I have a lot of work to do. I think it's an
Yeah.
honor and a privilege to be given a platform, to
Yeah.
be Food and Wine Best New Chef, to be
Yeah.
nominated by the James Beard Foundation. I've been waiting for that my whole life, but also I've been waiting to inspire people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've been doing talks. That's how I got the book. I would give a speech on my life story, on hopefully that it inspired someone from where I came from to keep going and know that there's an outlet. And I would like to continue that narrative. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
I'll have to be doing the work for some time
Yeah.
until I can get to a place when I can sleep. But I know for me, still
Yeah.
being young and growing in this
Yeah.
industry, I'd be in the restaurant 16 hours a day if I was back home anyway.
Right.
Because it just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and I love it, and I thrive in it.
Right.
Like service is, I love service. I love it. But
Yeah.
I think talking about these issues that aren't really talked about
Yeah.
will open the dialogue and hopefully inspire a lot of people to either continue to talk about it, or the people that are doing these things to
Right.
think about them before they're doing it, because you may discourage the next person that's like me to continue cooking in this industry. They may not put their head down and keep working. They may say, you know what, I can't do this.
Yeah, and that would be
horrible.
that would be a horrible shame. And I think the thing that I wrote for like the one of the blurbs that went out with this is I fundamentally believe that this book is going to change how kitchens look, the faces in the kitchen, the bodies in the kitchen, how fine dining kitchens are going to look in the next 5, 10 years down the road. So I gave you a little present when we
Yes,
started this.
this is amazing.
It's a book called Cooking with Patrick Clark that y'all are going to read an essay about this man in the July issue written by Portia Wilson. And the essay is about he was a black chef in 80s and 90s who died very young from a heart condition. And if you go through that book, it was written to benefit his family after he died. And his son is a chef.
Preston.
Yeah, his son
Yeah, I've cooked
Preston.
with him. He's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Preston Clark at Lure Fish Bar is continuing his dad's legacy. But the people who wanted to support his family are all the biggest names in cooking at that particular era in the early 90s. But then his legacy was lost in history. So I know that there are a lot of sort of young black chefs and stuff who maybe look out there and they don't see people as
No,
celebrated.
Patrick Clark was it for me coming up.
Yeah.
I looked up to him. I could never meet him.
Yeah.
But I would always look to him and be like, if Patrick Clark could do it,
Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to, and it was funny. I actually have a different book with his face on it in my house that I didn't realize that was him. I collect old books by Seymour Britchke, who used to write about New York restaurants from like the late 70s till he died in the early 90s. And there's Patrick Clark on the front of one of them. I just thought, like, who is that lovely smiling man who would always be like smiling at me from my bookshelf? And it wasn't until I sort of realized, I thought, like, as Portia was writing this, it was like, oh, I wonder if Seymour Britchke ever reviewed his restaurants, because he was head chef at Odeon when he was 24,
Wow.
which in New York City at the
Yeah.
time, and then like opened some of his own places. But then all of a sudden I made the connection. I went home and I got chills from this. But to find this book and people celebrating his legacy, but you see some of these other people's legends like being brought up and stuff. And I think unless you were specifically looking for him, he's sort of hard to find. So I hope there's this reclamation
Yeah, there
of some
should
of these
be.
chefs who came before. And the thing is, you're going to be the Patrick Clark for a whole lot of kids who maybe right now are teenagers, maybe even little kids who are, I love it. Like my grandnieces and nephews, they watch so much food TV. And it's really fun to see them be starstruck by people on there. So there are kids who are 10 years old or something like that who are looking at you and are going to be like, I want to be him. That's a lot.
That's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
And
but
that's why I think I have a job to do.
that's the thing. And so right now, how are you, because you're a leader, and while I have not seen you in service, I get the sense from the the conversations that we have about how to, have meetings and making people breathe and all that stuff. How do you communicate this? How do you hire? How do you communicate all of this to the people who work with you?
So when I hire, it's a process. So first we have a meeting. I just want to talk to you. I want to get to know you. I ask you weird questions like, if you could be an animal, what animal would you be? Or
what animal would you be?
Honestly, I would just be a dog. I think dogs are always so happy.
Yeah.
I would just be a dog.
Yeah.
I get to know them. We talk. If there's some sort of connection,
Yeah.
I'll invite them to stage in the kitchen for a day.
Okay.
So they have to spend a day in the kitchen with me. They do light prep work, something very tedious, like peeling pearl onion petals for like 3 hours.
Oh God,
or
that's a
something.
pain in the ass.
Yes.
Wow.
Peeling ginger, like 2 cases of ginger. They'll do that.
God.
We go through a lot of ginger paste in the restaurant, and then they'll stand on the pass and watch service with me and taste through the menu.
Yeah.
And then they'll cook a dish. I'll bring them a protein.
Whoa.
They'll cook a
No
dish.
pressure.
No pressure. We'll eat it together,
Yeah.
and then we'll have a conversation afterwards. My team, I make it really. It's really, really important to me to greet every single person when I come into the kitchen.
Okay.
And the whole restaurant. So I go through the dining room. I go to the kitchen. Hello to everybody. How are you doing?
Yeah.
How's your mom? How's your baby? 2 years old. It's
Yeah.
good to have that connection to the staff. And then we check through all their stations, make sure everything is good, see how the walk-in's looking.
Yeah.
And then we have our pre-shift. And the pre-shift to me is really, really important.
Yeah.
I usually start with a quote of the
Okay.
day. I tape it to the pass, I tape it to the door, in and out of the kitchen, just to
Yeah.
remind them. I talk about yesterday, what went well, what went wrong, how we can be better, what we need to focus on today, whether it's kitchen cleanliness or remembering a certain dish. And then I always end it on a positive note with shout outs.
That's
So everyone has
yeah.
the floor to shout people out.
Okay.
And it'll be like Andrew, for instance. Andrew's a server in my restaurant. He's awesome. We have a secret handshake and everything. I'll say like, Andrew, you really stepped up today. Like, thank you for coming in early. We were really like, in the weeds, and I appreciate you, Andrew. And then everyone will clap, and then we'll go around the room and give shout outs, end on a positive note. And that's usually a day in the kitchen. It's real. I think it's important to start service positively.
Yeah.
There's so many negative things I can talk about, but I make
Right.
it a point to only talk about one negative thing, because if you start talking about more than that, people get in their head one, and then they stop listening to.
Yeah.
So I try to end it always on a positive note and just stick to one topic to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And then what is I'm so fascinated. One of my favorite things to do is just watch a kitchen. And it's funny, those kitchens where it's, wait, chef,
Yeah.
versus, I loved, one of my favorite things is the pass at Hearth where there's a table there. And that's just a symphony to me, like watching that energy. And some things, like there's great music playing and stuff. What is the rhythm and energy of your kitchen during service?
So we, when a ticket comes in, we call it out. So it's like fire brassicas, and the whole kitchen's like, we.
Oh, you do a wait.
Yeah, we do we. Yeah. That's how it is. And we call out hands, and the servers line up, and
Yeah.
it's very traditional based off of like the kitchens that
You're
I've
very
worked
brigade?
in. Yeah, absolutely. And it's broken down into stations. So we have hot apps, we have roast, we have entremet, and we have garmagé pastry. And it's all expedited off of one pass.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty tight kitchen.
And
Yeah.
so then with the hiring of that, do you look for people with fine dining experience? Are you willing to look outside of that?
I look outside of that. For me, a resume is important, but I've hired based off of experience before. I've done it all. Hired based off of experience,
Yeah.
off of references. And it's like the person is the person. And
Yeah.
they're going to be the best version of themselves
Right.
when you're interviewing them. But it's really, I try to like just break them down and like ask weird questions and just see how they are, just to remove that shell,
Yeah.
so they can be open and I can really find out, what I'm going to be dealing with in the bad times and the good times.
Right. My friend Brian Caswell, a place I used to work, he wrote a piece for us about like 5 reasons you should always hire somebody with Waffle House on their resume, because they call it, there are no paper tickets, it's an open kitchen and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, and people from all different experiences. Because you're so emotionally in tune with how your staff is, what do you too, when this is a question I get from a lot of people trying to figure out how to deal with this. When you see that somebody is off, not just in how they might be executing their job just fine, but you can tell that there's something eating at them, or maybe they're not in control of the other things in their life and stuff. And you're a thinking, feeling person. How do you take care of that person? Because you're the boss, and that might be a hard conversation to have.
I bring them into the dining room. I don't go in my office because the office seems
That's
like
scary.
It's kind of scary.
Principal's office.
Exactly. So go into the dining room. I'll have them bring out water. I'll have them bring out the cocoa bread. Whatever your guest gets at the restaurant, and we'll sit. And I'll say, like, what's going on? Like, I see that you're, like, something is a little off. And most of the times they'll open up to me, and it'll be a teary-eyed moment.
Yeah.
Or I'll say, like, let's go walk around the wharf. And I'll just start talking about, so where'd you grow up? You know? And then I'll get to my point later on. But I'll talk to them indirectly first, just to kind of, like, my name's Kwame right now. It's not Chef. Like, just let's have a conversation, because you're not acting like yourself, and are you okay? Even when someone's late, it's like, why are you late?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Do we need to change your schedule? Like, what can we do to better, to get the best out of you? Because that's what we're ultimately trying to do, right? Is get the best out of them. And when you connect with someone on an emotional level to some degree, you still want to keep it professional. You can get the most out of people.
We had that was part of the conversation we had at the other day with the mentors. Like, Tom Colicchio was like, it used to be like, you're late, and when and he said he's mellowed on that. But now the question is, like, why were you late? Because people have lives, people are human beings, and I feel like we're coming more into an era where people are being treated like people, and I think it's to the benefit of everybody. I mean, the podcast that we is actually airing today. This will be a week from now. Timing, it's relative, but was about those kitchens of fear, where you walk in and everybody just has to be a robot and not a person, and God forbid.
That's how it was coming up. I mean, it was scary. You didn't want to drop anything, And I joke with my cooks about that all the time, because you can drop something, like, and I'll catch it really quickly, because
reflex.
Because one, when I was younger, you'll read in the book, I would get reprimanded for every little infraction that I had with my family. But
I cried reading that. Yeah,
it wasn't easy. But that, that's another thing that we don't really think about, especially in the world of fine dining. When someone comes in the kitchen, like, everything else is absolved. Like, I'm going to talk to you however I want to talk to you. You can't go at anyone to complain, and this is what it is. But for me, I had an emotional or a psychological connection to the way I was being talked to, in these kitchens versus the way I was talked to when I was, like, abused as a child.
Yeah.
And it brought back that fear, that same, I remember, it was like, man, here's this thing that I tried to crumple away and put inside of me. And I remember, like, calling my mother countless times, crying hysterically, bringing back memories from when I was a kid. And she was like, she also went through it when she was a kid. And she's like, you have to realize that voice in the back of your head is not real. And those things that they're telling you, like, that you're worthless, that you're a piece of shit or whatever, is not real. That's not who you are. Like, when you hear it, say, like, thank you, and keep moving, Yeah.
I mean, the untraining of that is so important. I know when I was writing my book, it made me realize patterns in my life of kind of people I needed to have around me because it was familiar, but they were always the people who would, for some reason, like, say really cruel things or do really cool things because they told me. Some of them straight up told me, like, well, I'm doing this for your benefit to do this. And really it's sadism. It really, really is. And if you were a person who is inherently like a masochist, then you just soak that up like a sponge. And all chefs are masochists to some degree.
Absolutely.
And perpetrating the abuse that they saw coming up. And I think
regurgitating it.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's just like a child, you kind of fall into those same things that happen to you. And hopefully with a book like this, we can break that cycle and just start to think And that's what I just want people to do, is just start thinking about these things.
Yeah, and also think that it doesn't have to be that particular way. That I know that when you have come from a past where people have been cruel for their own benefit, or just because they're just kicking on down, the kicks reverberate through the generations, and they do all that kind of stuff. At least for me, I remember when I met my husband, I was almost suspicious because he was such a good and kind person, and we'd always been people who were like caretakers in the relationship. So when you meet somebody else who does that, you're like, what do they want from me?
Yeah. Why they're so nice.
How did you learn to accept kindness? I mean, clearly your mother had.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
What does that look like?
I'm going to be very candid with you. Like,
Yeah.
I have, and I'm going to get emotional.
That's all right.
I have talks with my fiance where I'm like really upset with her over something like minor that she did. And she's like, I am not out to get you. Like, I know that you've been through some things with people, but like, I support you and I need you to know that. And it's like in those moments, I'm just like, oh, God, like I need to let the guard down, because I've been so used to it through my life of, you know, people intentionally or non-intentionally trying to do that. That it's tough. I'm still learning how to do it. So I don't have an answer of of exactly how to do that, but I'm still learning.
I went through an exercise in therapy, and as my many years of therapy, where you go and talk to childhood you, and first of all, let them know that it turned out okay, and being kind to your younger self, and letting them know that the things that were done were not okay, and they weren't a reflection of your worth. They were from somebody else's damage, generally. I mean, there is genuine correction stuff that needs to happen from people who care, but the way that you deliver mentorship and growth and education and that kind of stuff can be done in a very different kind of way, and it can really inform how you move forward. Who are the people who you have seen do that really, really well in the field, who really have set aside that old model of like break them down, that military kind of thing, and instead like led with kindness and led with goodness? Who have been those people for you?
James Kent.
Okay, yeah. Tell people about.
Yeah, I mean, it was very night and day from, you know, the other fine dining restaurants when I walked into the kitchens of EMP.
Yeah.
And James Kent, it felt like for once he didn't see color.
Yeah.
He was just like, yo, what's up? Like, I don't know if for you all that know James Kent, he's just like very like, what's up? You know, he's from New York, you know, grew up in New York, and the way he talked to me was led with kindness.
Yeah.
And there was like I don't know, there was just a look in his eye that was like very familiar. It was a familial look.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing there. It was just like, man, you're a good person. And that really, really inspired me. And it still inspires me to this day. The way he made me feel is the way that I like to make my cooks feel. Even when I'm like reprimanding them, the way that I'm delivering is very important.
Yeah.
Brian Lockwood was another person that really led with kindness.
I don't know him. Could you tell me about him, please?
He's at 11 Madison Park
as
well.
Too. Okay.
Yeah. He led with a lot of kindness. That same familial look, you know?
Yeah. You deserve to be here.
You deserve to be here. Yeah, you work hard, you work clean, you know? Like
you make it nice.
You make it nice. Me being black wasn't, I don't think it crossed his mind, you know? There's chefs that, you know, Bruce Mattel, he's the associate dean at the CIA.
Yeah.
You know, he's another person that I just walked into the CIA hoping to like get in, and after we talked and he was like, oh, you're from the Bronx, like I know where you come from, this is amazing, like we need you in this school because you're going to be a champion of what we're trying to do here. And he said that to me, this must have been like 7 years ago.
Wow.
You know, Jason Batanovich, another chef at the CIA, you know, he saw something in me and just, you know, treated me like a human being. And it's sad
it's not that
it's
hard
not
to
that
treat
hard.
people.
Yeah. So like these people really, really stick out in my career. And there are probably plenty more people that I'm not thinking of right now.
Oh, it's all right. I always have that like laundry list after the fact. I should've done it, but I mean,
I'll think hopefully at the James Beard.
I have. I'm going to be there.
Speech. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be there.
Knock on wood. Is this
yeah,
real wood?
I think it's real wood. It's whatever it is. We're gonna do that because it's really important to have that.
Thank these people.
And
yeah.
I know that there's a future where people are naming you for that kind of thing. Well, let's talk about you being from New York and where your food comes from. So, you're a lot younger than I am. So, but you were born here. So I moved here in 1996,
Okay.
and I see sort of what the
Blizzard year, I think.
Oh, a lot of stuff. Actually, I moved here after the blizzard because
Okay.
I had been living in upstate New York, and that was really crazy.
Yeah.
So, but I knew when I got here, just like this pantheon of restaurants at the time. What were those New York restaurants that you saw that you were like, okay, that like when somebody calls a pool shot, like what were the ones that you looked to and you're like that?
Well, honestly, my mother used to take me to Patrick Clark's restaurant.
Oh my God!
As a baby, I still have faint memories of it.
Which one of his restaurants?
Tavern.
Okay.
Yeah. So there, but a lot of them were in the Bronx. Honestly, they were like little Cucci Fritos shops in the Bronx. They were like West African restaurants. Small diners. It was a lot of like smaller restaurants where I grew up in the Bronx. You know, Little Italy. Yeah. We used to go and get all the different types of pastries on Arthur Avenue and stuff. So it was a lot of like things like that that I remember.
The Bronx is getting its due now. I feel like after a long time.
I just wrote a list of, well, they didn't include it, but I did something with Newsweek, and I had a whole list of like all my favorite Bronx spots. Well, I'll share with you.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
'Cause I had written a story when I worked at CNN when Anthony Bourdain did his Bronx episodes.
I thought that was awesome.
I was so fun. He did such a great job with that. Okay, now that's where I get teary thinking about him. Then how did you marry this with then the African food and the Nigerian influences? We were shouting out in the Best New Chefs story. There's a dish made with these seeds that I knew they were going nuts in the Food and Wine kitchen trying to find the ingredients for this because they wanted to do correctly by you. Can you talk about that dish and where that came from?
So egusi stew is probably my first food memory. Egusi stew is a national dish of Nigeria.
Wow.
One of the.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say that, but like jollof rice, egusi stew. But it's a dish of these ground melon seeds, pumpkin leaves. You have iru, which is like a fermented locust bean. Very similar to like the flavor profile of like a miso or something.
You were saying, I love fermented.
Yeah.
I love seeds.
Yeah, it's really, really great. And then we use like ginger and garlic and onions and like Scotch bonnet chilies and fish stock or whatever stock you're using for whatever protein you're going to serve. You could do chicken or fish. Crayfish powder, which is like little tiny shrimp ground up into a powder. And then I use Maggi cube, which is like kind of controversial for some people in Africa. But for me, that's how my aunts made it. You know, that's how my aunts back in Nigeria, they would always put Maggi cube in it to give it this umami bump, you know? And you cook all this down with palm oil and all these flavors like melt together.
Sounds like comfort, just like
so good. And the egusi seed is kind of like it's a melon seed. It's almost like a pumpkin seed a little bit. And you take it and you grind it up into a powder and you cook that and everything. And you let it simmer. You have to cook it out for a while for it to break down. And I really can't describe the flavor. We serve it in my restaurant with monkfish. We braise the monkfish in that.
Monkfish,
And then we serve it with fufu. Fufu is a powdered form of like pounded yam. So we have yam, these giant cassavas in Nigeria that you boil and you pound in a huge mortar and pestle until it's elastic, and then you use that to dip into the egusi stew. So we serve it in my restaurant probably like one season, like usually like in the spring for like 3 months. And we do egusi monkfish, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
So for your customer base, I think probably a lot of people, you probably had some of these things at home or on travels, but they're maybe don't get to see it in the context of a fine dining restaurant. Talk to me about getting diners
involved. You know,
Yeah.
we just put it out there. We put it on the menu. I trust my dining room team to
Right.
really convey the message because they are,
Right.
they're the first point of contact for these like fufu. They're like, what is fufu? And they have to explain to them.
Yeah.
And usually they're really excited. My
Yeah.
dining room staff is very diverse. So you'll see Ethiopian people, Eritrean. You'll see, Venezuelan. You'll see people from America. You'll see all walks of life. So they're really excited about the food because it's different. And it reminds them of home a little bit.
Right.
So I remember one of my proudest moments in Kith was walking through the dining room and seeing white people eating fufu and stew with their hands.
Oh, wow.
And then a Nigerian table next to them teaching them how to do it. It was like,
Talk across the tables.
this is why I do this. I want to see all walks of life eating this food that they probably would never be eating.
Right.
But also, like, they're able to celebrate within the same experience, and then also people of color can celebrate an experience while still celebrating their culture.
Yeah.
They can celebrate a graduation over fufu or oxtails in this beautiful ambiance,
Yeah.
enjoying a craft cocktail or pairing a wine that goes with it, and feel a part of the conversation.
Yeah, that is such an important thing. And I feel like when this recipe comes out in the issue, what I'm really looking forward to is when it was going to be the Instagram moment. Because you see certain dishes go viral, like Alison Roman's chickpea stew or Samin Nosrat's focaccia and stuff. I am so looking for people cooking this on Instagram.
Yeah.
And seeing to see people like engage with your food, this food that has been held dear to you for such a long time. It's got to be such an emotional thing. How's it been for your mom?
It's been a roller coaster for her too. She's very, very proud. She's a personal chef in the Cayman Islands now. Rough life, but
Poor baby.
she lives in Grand Cayman on the beach.
Yeah.
And she's a personal chef to a lovely, lovely family. And she's very proud. She's coming to the Beard Awards for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
She grew up in Chicago, so this will be her first time back in Chicago since she was a kid.
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to try to take her around to all the restaurants.
Bring her on the red carpet.
I will. So I'm looking forward to really sharing this experience with my family, the people that have been there. My mom is probably the one person in my life that has never given up on me.
Yeah.
She's put me through some things to better me as a man. But all in all, she's never given up on me. She's never closed the door. And I'm just very happy to share this experience with her.
I can't wait to meet her in Chicago and thank her for you, for your existence and not just the chef you are, but the man you are. It's you've done good work here. Is there something that we haven't covered that you want to talk about, that you want to say out to the up-and-coming people, that 10-year-old kid who is seeing you on TV, hearing your voice, maybe getting to, see your books and see your being on the front of this in a chef coat?
I would say to the people, that are, hopefully the next generation, or even people that are older than me that are thinking of what to do, don't let anyone define your path.
Yeah.
Because your path is your path. And I remember a chef telling me that I would never become a chef. He's like, you will never be a chef. Like you can't cook. You're lazy. And he was like, you need to get screamed at. You need to get yelled at. You need to just go through what everyone else has gone through. And I was like, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to work hard. And you're not going to tell me what path I need to take to get to where I need to be, because my definition of success is different from what yours is. And I want people to understand that and to know that it is okay to take your own path, to live in your own purpose, and to do something that feels right to you, because you have to live with yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah. Kids are listening. Hear that? I have a selfish question to ask. What's in your nutcrackers?
Oh, and my nutcrackers?
Yeah, because when I was reading the book, I was like, I've had them. You buy it on the beach.
I gotta tell you that off camera.
Okay. It made me so thirsty, and I can't wait to like eat your goosey stew because I want to have you make it and I want to try it at home because
you
I
gotta come
also
to DC.
because so we've been talking about like me coming to DC and like come watch lineup and stuff and pre-shift. And,
Let's do
and
that,
stuff.
and we'll cook it together. But we should cook it in the kitchen here, the food and wine kitchen.
Yeah.
We'll do a goosey stew.
I would love that. That's gonna be so good.
Yeah.
So I have that that Oprah secret question. So you're okay. So now that we started rolling out the podcast, I'm gonna have to switch up these questions because now people who've actually heard the podcast know what's coming. Because I know how much you put into everything around you, and I also know that you're a man who does not take time to breathe or anything. What is the selfish thing that you want for yourself? And this is a question to the universe. So the universe can help give you this thing. What is that thing that you want to ask the universe for?
I want to be able to take a month off every year.
Yeah.
I want that because when I'm on, I'm working every single day. So that's what I want from the universe.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out a way to do that.
Dear restaurant deities
Yes.
and good people of DC.
I think people deserve it. You know,
Yeah.
I think people do it. They do it in other countries, no matter what industry you're in.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it's important to have that because if you're an entrepreneur, it's tough to turn off. You can't turn your phone off. You can't turn off. But being able to say like, listen, I'm going away.
Yeah. Throwing my phone into the ocean.
Figure it out for this month.
Yeah.
So we can live because you only get 77 summers?
Is that what it is?
Something like that.
That's your
on
next
average.
book is 77 summers.
What are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's real deep.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking you have some guest chef come in and be like, okay, here, do not crash the car.
Exactly.
Like take it over and like have
Exactly.
it be a summer thing or whatever.
Exactly.
I want that for you. So now we move on to the speed round.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. What is your comfort food?
My comfort food, this is so simple, is chicken wings and pork fried rice from Chinese takeout.
Do you have there's a Chinese takeout that I love in DC, City Lights of China.
Yeah.
And I love in particular. What is the place that you love?
It's called Asian American too, and I don't even know if they have a number one, but that's the name of it, and it's
Just
amazing.
One of those things where you're like, I find this on, you Seamless a lot, and it's places, and I'll walk by it and I'll be like, oh, that's the place I get the food from that I love so
exactly,
much.
right?
Are there any sauces with the chicken wings or
Mumbo sauce.
Okay.
DC, baby.
Oh,
You gotta
okay.
shout out DC.
So tell about mumbo sauce.
So mumbo sauce is like a condiment that they serve in takeout restaurants in DC. It's like a ketchup, hot sauce mixture. There's like a lot of like corn syrup in there probably. Some recipes use like pineapple juice, ketchup, hot sauce. Yeah, it's great. There's also a local company called DC City Mumbo Sauce, if I'm saying it correctly, but they're great, and they make their own like homemade version that you can buy in certain locations. So.
Oh, yum. Well, that's amazing. What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
Oh my God, I know exactly what it is. So I was just in LA. The restaurant is called, I need to shout it out. It's called Destroyer.
Oh,
in Los Angeles.
Is that Jordan Kahn's place?
I don't know what it was. I had a meeting. It was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was this little restaurant.
Oh, it is Jordan Kahn. I just got the off camera nut. It is Jordan Kahn, who was what? Oh, he was Best New Chef.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
So I was.
And he's also got Vespertine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was having a meeting at like the studio. There was nothing on the strip but this little restaurant. I walk in, I see like grain bowl. It reminded me of like Copenhagen/Japan.
Yes,
the restaurant.
very.
It was so strange. It was in the middle of nowhere. I was like, I don't want this food. This is gonna be like whatever. This is like for all the offices here.
Yeah.
And I walk out and I'm like, all right, let me come back in. I should have Googled it, but I just didn't. And I went in. There was a dish. It was like chicken confit, spigarello, and like grits. I was like, okay. And then roasted strawberries. In my mind, I was like, this is going to be like the silliest thing ever. Still had no idea where I was. I got it. I sat down and I took one bite and I was like, oh my God, where am I? It's when you look at a dish like, what? Like
Those
like,
things should not go together.
Yeah. And you take another bite and you're like, how? And another bite. And it was just to the last spoonful, I was savoring it. And I went to the cashier. I was like, I just need to tell you, this is amazing, and I love everything that you all are doing. And they were like, okay, man, appreciate it. Like they were
like, yeah, we know.
No, they weren't like, yeah, we know. They were like, yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And they had to get back to service. But it was like,
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing for me.
So he was in Copenhagen with us.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is so weird, but I can talk to just about any chef. He's the one chef who I've been too intimidated to go up and talk to him. And I think, so dear Jordan Kahn.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. I had no idea that was the restaurant.
Oh my gosh, yes. So what is the last meal that somebody cooked for you at their house? Not in their restaurant, but at their house. Because people don't cook for chefs.
Yes. The last meal someone cooked at their house. Man, that's hard. I'm trying to think of the last time I was in someone's house. Because I've been on...
yeah, you just are constant state of travel right now.
Traveling so much.
Any holidays, or just your mom?
My fiance, I mean, honestly.
Yeah. What does she cook for you?
She cooks pasta. Oh, that was the last thing I had. So she made pasta. It was, I don't know, she always gets like so many different, if you talk to her for 3 days, she'll tell you 18 times that she studied abroad in Italy. So
Go Maya.
Go Maya. I always joke with her about that. But she made some sort of pasta, some shape I don't even know, that she'll be able to tell you where it came from and why it's shaped that and name that. And it was a simple pasta with like, I don't know, like crispy chicken and like a white wine sauce. And I remember I had my friend come down to help me at Kith and Kin from New York, and he had just flown in. He came straight to the restaurant. We went from the restaurant to the house. I was like, I got to eat something before I go to sleep, which is like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I heat up her pasta in the microwave, and the emulsion still doesn't break. Like, she emulsified like chicken stock, butter, white wine, a little bit of cream, anchovy paste, like all this stuff, and emulsion was perfect emulsion. I put it in the microwave probably longer than I should have, and she cooks the best food I've ever had in my life.
Oh my God, go Maya! Yeah. Like that is wonderful.
So,
what living musician would you want to cook for, and what would you cook for them?
Living musician.
Because I have to caveat that, because otherwise everybody's going to go way back. And
living musician, I would really like to cook for.
Because it's another shout out to the universe. Because if you're listening, if they came walking into Kith and Kin,
that I'd be really, really excited about.
Yeah, or at your house.
It would probably be either Drake would be really cool to cook for.
He's a restaurateur.
Yeah, I'd cook for him. Or man, I'm trying to think who I listen to a lot right now.
Yeah.
I'm honestly listening to a lot of A Boogie with the Hoodie. He's from the Bronx. He's a rapper. And Tory Lanez, another rapper out of Canada.
Yeah.
So those 3 would be really cool to sit down and like cook for.
What would you make?
I would make my gooseberry piri piri salad with like green seasoning, marinated tomatoes and avocados, and I would make just oxtails with rice and peas, like Jamaican oxtails with rice and peas.
Dear Drake, and dear everybody else, it's so funny because like Drake is an ongoing topic of conversation in our office, and especially the Cheesecake Factory stuff. For some reason, we're all always saying that. So,
that's hilarious.
Take Drake to the Cheesecake Factory. And then you have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. What do you do?
When I have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care, what would I do in my perfect 5 minutes?
Yeah.
I get a massage.
Oh.
I never have time to do a massage because it's like a whole hour. You know, I like to do like the 90-minute massage.
Right.
And I never have enough time. So maybe no, because that's a 5-minute massage would kind of suck.
Yeah.
Right? Probably just write out everything that's going through my mind and just get it on paper.
Yeah.
Because lists are very, very important to me.
Yeah. And thank you for what you have put on paper, because I really, really, truly believe that this book is going to change a whole lot of people's lives in a really special and meaningful way. And I hope you are getting a chance to feel all the glow of what's happening right now. You earned it.
Thank you.
And I am so grateful for the time
Thank
you were here today.
Thank you. This was great.
Oh my gosh. And bottom part of the thing, I always have to read this because I'm usually so emotional by the end. So I want to thank you so much to our guest today, Kwame Onwuachi, and on Instagram at Basted Mind, and restaurants are Kith and Kin and Philly Wing Fry. And please go buy Notes from a Young Black Chef. You will not regret it. Buy 10 copies, give them to everyone who you know. And thank you to our producers, Jennifer Martinick and Alicia Cabral. Thanks to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend, write a review, or rate us. Those stars and comments really matter. If you think there's something that you'd like us for us to talk about or a guest you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can find me on Twitter at Kitten with a Whip. Find out more about the show and catch up on all the episodes at foodandwine.com and at Food and Wine's YouTube page. Thanks for listening. Take good care of yourself till the next time.
I want to do one thing with you before we go. We're going to lock hands like this.
Yes.
And we're going to send an energy wave. So I want you to think about the thing that makes you the happiest.
Yeah.
And you're going to send it to me. We're going to do like this.
Okay. Oh
and then I'm going to think of the thing that makes me the happiest, and I'm going to send it to you, okay?
Okay.
Whenever you're ready. Ooh, I felt it.
Oh, I felt that. Thank you.
So good.
I'm so happy you're here. Listeners, I hope you felt that.